So BioShock is one of the most loved, most iconic, and most influential video games out there. It released in 2007 to glowing critical acclaim, and even sold 4 million copies on a small budget of $25 million. It birthed a franchise and has become one of the most successful first-person shooter series ever. But since it's been well over 10 years since BioShock came into existence, I thought I'd take a look back at the game's strengths and weaknesses to see how it holds up. And of course, there will be spoilers. So BioShock starts off in the year 1960 with the main character Jack on a plane, and we get some narration.
They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
Now that is how you do narration, folks. It's short and easy to understand and gets you right into the story. So the plane mysteriously crashes and everyone aboard dies except Jack. Fortunately, there is a lighthouse with a statue nearby, so there is some shelter for the main character to go to. As Jack enters the dark lighthouse, the lights come on to reveal a statue. No gods or kings, only man. Continuing down, he finds a baptisphere and enters.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture.
So yes, the plane has crashed right on top of an underwater city named Rapture. Continuing through the city and arriving at the docking station, we see what the city is like and what the people here are like, before then hearing a voice on the nearby radio.
Would you kindly pick up that shortwave radio? I don't know how you survived that plane crash, but I've never been one to question Providence. I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive.
Now Atlas guides you through and helps you fight the enemies known as splicers.
Now, would you kindly find a crowbar or something?
Haha, nice Half-Life reference. There is then an encounter with a splicer before then Jack grabs a bottle of a mysterious substance named Adam and injects it straight into himself right away. Okay then. Jack then falls off the balcony and gets knocked out, and then some splicers come along trying to loot him. This introduces what the splicers are like themselves, constantly looking for supplies to survive Rapture, and it also introduces the Big Daddy and the Little Sister, the two most iconic characters in BioShock. I mean, they're on the front fucking cover of the game. Anyway, no big deal, because now you can shoot electricity out your hands. The opening of BioShock works for a few reasons. 1, it doesn't dilly-dally and gets you right into the narrative. 2, every piece of dialogue or narration has a purpose. 3, it introduces you to the city of Rapture, and even clues you into why it was made, and kind of hints at how it fell. Thus, it doesn't make the player constantly asking questions instead of paying attention to the plot. 4, it gives the player enough information to get invested, but it doesn't give them all the pieces of the puzzle right away. 5, it introduces the main mechanics of the game through a tutorial that is so well done, it doesn't even feel like a tutorial. It just feels natural. Overall, the opening of BioShock is one of my favourites in all of gaming. But here is where we get into the gameplay of BioShock. BioShock is a first-person shooter with some RPG elements. A lot of the core mechanics of BioShock are heavily inspired by a previous game by Irrational Games, System Shock 2. Now, I could do a full comparison between the two games, but I won't. To sum up, BioShock is basically a watered-down version of System Shock 2. Not that that's a bad thing. So, let's start off with the weapon selection. BioShock's weapon selection is pretty standard among FPS games. You have your melee weapon, a pistol, a shotgun, a machine gun, a grenade launcher, a crossbow, and a flamethrower, which can also shoot ice and electricity. The wrench is pretty useless after the first couple levels. It does basically no damage to the more powerful enemies and has no upgrades. Ultimately, it just takes up another weapon on the weapon slot. The pistol is pretty accurate and does a fair amount of damage, and it can be upgraded like every gun in the game, and has alternate fire rounds, anti-personnel rounds, which are more powerful against just normal fleshy humans, and then armor-piercing rounds, which are great against big daddies. Even late game the pistol can be useful, so ultimately, I'd say it serves its purpose quite well as the standard kind of weapon. Up next is the machine gun, aka Tommy gun. It has the same ammo types as the pistol, but does more damage at the expense of less accuracy and more recoil. The problem with this game is that during the later parts of the game, it is a very ineffective weapon to use. You'll pretty much only use it if all the other guns are out of ammo. Overall, it's an okay weapon, but it's not really one you'll want to switch to in the midst of combat. Now, the shotgun is a really cool weapon. The damage it does to enemies is so satisfying, and the kickback of the weapon is mighty powerful, although the downside of the weapon is the reload time. Jack also has to cock the shotgun in between each shot, but there is an upgrade that allows you to go full auto. Is that the saying? Full auto? I don't know. Semi-automatic? I don't fucking know. The alternate fire rounds also include shots that explode, and also some electric shots. Overall, it's a pretty cool gun to use. I've always found the idea of a shotgun in a first-person shooter simple but genius. It's a gun that requires you to get in close to the enemy while you're looking through the eyes of the character. Fucking perfect idea. Anyway, it's a really fun gun to use, and it's really useful against tougher enemies. The grenade launcher is pretty cool, and I think it has the most variety out of all the guns. I mean, you have proximity mines to lay out for enemies to walk over, which can help you if you're the type of player who likes to plan out their next move. There's also a heat-seeking missile, which does a devastating amount of damage to enemies, and is almost guaranteed one hit, but it has scarce ammo. There is also the regular frag grenade for the grenade launcher, which still does a fair amount of damage. There's a couple ways you can get creative with the grenade launcher, so overall, pretty fun gun to use. There's also this flamethrower gun known as the chemical thrower because it doesn't just shoot fire, it shoots ice and electricity, which is cool, but there is an issue with it regarding how it works with plasmids because in some ways it's kinda just a gun that shoots plasmids. And you already have plasmids, but they already kinda serve the same purpose, but plasmids are faster to use and are more efficient to use, so there isn't really much reason to use it. And finally, there is the crossbow, which is helpful for ranged combat. You can even set up trap darts, which if you combine with the proximity mines, then you can plan out some devastating attacks to enemies, and it is helpful for when you need to hold out against certain enemies. It does quite a bit of damage, but the rate of fire is really low, and you have to be very precise with it. Overall, the guns of BioShock are unique, and each serve a different purpose. Overall, the weapon selection is pretty good. Moving on to the enemies, starting off with the splicers, which are the enemies you'll be fighting throughout the game. There are different variations of splicers, and each will force you to change up your weapons, plasmids, and playstyle, at least in some ways. There are splicers that use melee weapons and firearms, there are splicers that can teleport, splicers that can throw grenades at you, and splicers that can climb on the ceiling and go in for a surprise attack. Oftentimes there will be a different combination of splicers attacking you at once, which means you'll have to think on your feet of how to fight them, which weapon to use, what plasmid to use, and if you want to lure them into a certain area to force them into a bottleneck, or just use traps to deal more damage. What I do like about the leadhead splicers, the ones with guns, is that the game is coded for them to miss you on the first couple shots, which gives the player the opportunity to dodge them and fire back. It's also nice that there are plenty of different variants of the splicer, as if there were just one type of enemy, the game would get boring so fast. So the variety here is quite nice. The AI for the splicers also does appear to be reasonably intelligent. They will look for health stations when their health is low, and do try and back away from the player and take cover. The next frenemy is the security bots and turrets. Now I call them frenemies because of the fact that they can fight against you or for you. When you're fighting against them, they normally aren't that hard to take down. You can just shock them with the electric bolt plasmid, or the plasmid where you can hypnotize them to fight for you. Either way it's weird because the security bots and turrets in BioShock are steam powered, so how can they tell the difference between a friendly and an enemy? I don't know. But it does make the gameplay more interesting as you can hack these machines to fight for you, which means you will have more firepower against your enemies. It's just cool to have an entity in the game that can both help and hinder the player depending on what they do. There are also security alarms which can go off, but There is a switch that shuts them off. It costs currency though, so there is a setback. You can also set the security systems on enemies, which is fun too. And finally, the Big Daddies. The Big Daddies are passive enemies until you attack them, which means the player can use all of their resources to prepare for the fight. They can plan out where they're going to lure the Big Daddy, where they're going to deal the most damage, and with what weapon, what traps they're going to use, and it's just really fun to fight these enemies and have everything go according to plan. And the fun part is that even if your plan fucks up, there will likely be enough resources for you to improvise, meaning that taking down a Big Daddy is entirely dependent on the player's critical thinking and planning skills. What I do like with all the different types of enemies in this game is that they all have different scales in how they interact with the player. Splicers are always an enemy, turrets and security bots are enemies that can be turned into a friendly, and Big Daddies are not an enemy until you make them so. Now, the reason you'll want to fight the Big Daddies is to get Adam from Little Sisters. Adam is what fuels your plasmids. Plasmids and guns are like the yin and yang of BioShock. Plasmids are not really superpowers, but are more or less tools to help you in combat, meaning you can't rely on just them alone. You'll need to use them in combination with your weapons in order to be very effective in combat. There is also a camera which you can use to take photos of your enemies, which will reward you with more damage points and upgrades known as gene tonics, which adds slight upgrades to your character, Jack. What I also do like is how they make sense to exist in Rapture. For example, Electrobolt would be very convenient for quickly and easily giving power to machinery. Incinerate would be useful for starting a fire or lighting a cigarette, and Telekinesis would be useful for moving furniture and so forth. It's a nice bit of detail, and it shows how much thought was put into this game and the mechanics. Each combat area has a different structure in terms of level geometry and plays out very differently, and gives you a chance to use all the tools at your disposal. I also do like how the design of Rapture makes sense. It feels as if the city just happens to work as a good video game level, but they were also designed to function as an actual city. Overall, the level design, pretty good. Now, while BioShock is a great game and all, it isn't perfect, and I do have some criticisms to make. First off, some of the plasmids cross over too much, as in there are plasmids that only have slight differences between them, but ultimately serve the same purpose. One example would be Electrobolt and Winterblast, both of them are stun plasmids meant to stun the enemy. Or another example would be Incinerate and Insect Swarm, both of them pretty much act the same way, they just look different. I don't need two types of plasmids that are pretty much the same thing. I also do think the camera system is kind of annoying. Like, if you want your camera shots to be really effective, then you'll have to take them during combat, which means you have to pause mid-combat and take the photo, which slows down the pace of the game, and it's annoying. There is also this hacking minigame, which it isn't really hacking, it's just plumbing. And they are fun, but they pause the combat, meaning that you can just hack a turret or security bot and don't have to worry about enemies attacking you. It just slows down the game. There were also some times when I was hacking a turret or like a security bot, and it was literally impossible to hack them. That's a bunch of bullshit. The hit detection is also weird sometimes, as I would be aiming right at the target and firing, but for some reason it doesn't register. It's just kind of weird. I also do feel as if there are a bunch of random difficulty spikes throughout the game, where the game will just get insanely difficult for no reason, and then it will go back to being a cakewalk. I played on hard mode, and the game just feels very inconsistent. It's also weird how the Big Daddies become easier to fight as the game progresses, but the splicers become harder to fight. It can be tedious considering that they become basically semi-bullet sponges towards the end of the game. Where the fuck would a splicer take more bullets to kill than a Big Daddy? That makes no sense. Also, the final level and the final boss can go suck a spliced dick. The amount of turrets and security bots, and overpowered splicers and the lack of resources almost ruins the game. Plus, there is a section where you become a Big Daddy and defend Little Sisters as they gather Adam, and it's the worst fucking thing ever. Funny how BioShock 2 took the worst element of BioShock and not only made it fun, but made it one of the best aspects of the game. Thank you, BioShock 2. However, I'm going to be fair on BioShock, as I have heard some criticisms of BioShock's gameplay that aren't really all that valid. First one being that the game is like a semi-RPG game and it doesn't contain an inventory like most RPGs. But I don't see that as a problem because most of the items you pick up are just currency or health or just EVE increases. So what would be the point in having an inventory? It'd just slow down the game. People also complain about the Vita Chambers instantly respawning you, which removes the challenge. While this is true, the Vita Chambers can be turned off, which is how I play the game. Also, a similar mechanic was in System Shock 2, and I didn't see anyone complain about that despite it being more tedious. People also complain that the game has a big fat marker telling you where to go, but once again it can be turned off if you don't want it, so it's kind of a meaningless criticism. But overall, BioShock has top-notch gameplay with fun weapons, a good variety of enemies, some interesting plasmids and upgrades that allow you to play the game in a bunch of different ways, and level design that works in unity with the gameplay to create fun combat encounters. But BioShock is not only known for its top-notch gameplay, but also its story as well. So, let's dig into that. The story of BioShock is considered to be one of, if not the best in video game history, so why don't we take a look to see if that statement is true or not. So as established, the opening of BioShock is fucking brilliant, but how does the rest of the game go? After encountering a couple more splicers, Jack ends up in an elevator where we learn that Atlas has a family trapped in Rapture.
Listen, I've got a family. I need to get them out of here. But the splicers have cut me off from them. If you can reach them in Neptune's bounty, then maybe, just maybe...
There are also audio diaries in this game, and BioShock is one of the few games to do it right. In most games, audio diaries are just boring extras that don't really add any insight into the world of the game or the characters. BioShock is the complete opposite. First off, the audio logs provide great backstory for what led to Rapture's downfall, and also have a reason to exist because Andrew Ryan wanted to document all the moments of Rapture's rise. Second off, the characters in the audio logs are really deep and interesting with their own goals and worries. Third off, the story in the audio dialogues is so interesting it could actually be its own game. Overall, the audio dialogues are a welcome addition. Plus, unlike most games, it makes sense for the audio dialogues to be spread out everywhere because the entire city has been in shambles for over a year. It's also great as it can tell the story of the game without interrupting gameplay and encourages the player to explore the environments to get more of the story. There also is quite a bit of environmental storytelling, like you'll see a dead body next to a cash register which gives the impression that the splicer was committing a robbery but didn't make it out. Some subtle stuff like that. It really does make the splicers feel like actual individuals, not just brainless enemies you face. The game then shows the little sister and Big Daddy again. Which I always thought it was weird because you see the Big Daddy drill his chest, but then his chest is just fine afterwards. Not a big deal, but kind of immersion breaking. Jack then tries to go through Neptune's bounty, but there is a security shutdown, and a few moments later, Andrew Ryan introduces himself.
So tell me, friend, which one of the bitches sent you?
Now this is awesome. First off, it really gives you a great idea of who Andrew Ryan is now that you're, in a way, face to face with him. Next off, the lighting in this scene is perfect. It's cold, blunt, and dark, just like Andrew Ryan. Some splicers then try to break through the glass, but Jack escapes. Just 20 minutes in, and BioShock has already introduced so much without it feeling like it's being shoved down your throat. Great. Great fucking storytelling, man. I love it. Okay, that's fucking cringy. I also do like how the game keeps the objectives pretty simple. Like the current objective is just to get Atlas's family. It means the player will never feel lost in the story, as they always have a clear goal. Jack then heads through a medical area, System Shock 2 reference, and the environments here are creepy and disturbing. It shows how a doctor named Steinman went crazy on his customers he was supposed to upgrade and fix. He is constantly unsatisfied with how they turn out.
What can I do with this one, Aphrodite? She won't stay still! I want to make them beautiful, but they always turn out wrong! That one's too fat! This one's too tall! This one's too symmetrical! And now, what's this guy? An intruder! He's ugly! 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 Ugly!
Yeah, he's a bit nuts. What I do like about BioShock is that it shows how the downfall of Rapture affected everyone, from doctors to artists to scientists. It really helps get a great picture of what these people might have been like before Rapture's downfall, and how much of an effect it's had on them since. We then get introduced to Tenenbaum, who looks after the Little Sisters, and she threatens to kill Jack if he hurts the Little Sisters in front of him. The game then gives you a choice to either save or harvest the Little Sister. If you save the Little Sister, then she will be free of the Adam in her, and you will get some Adam for it. If you harvest them, then you kill them and get more Adam, although if you do save them, they will reward you. Now, I do have a couple issues with this. First off, this choice doesn't really have any impact on the story apart from the ending. The final cutscene is the only part that will change. There is also a section later where Tenenbaum helps Jack, and it doesn't make sense for her to do so if you harvest them, but okay. Second off, it isn't a hard choice. Like, the choice is basically, do you want to save a little kid, or are you a sadistic fucking psychopath who murders children? Third off, you don't really get all that much more Adam from harvesting them. You get like 40 more, which isn't really that much. Fourth off, this gets into the discussion of ludonarrative dissonance. Now, this is a long topic, so I'll try and keep it short, at least as short as possible. On October 7th, 2007, Clint Hocking from Click Nothing made a post about ludonarrative dissonance in BioShock, which, in case you don't know, ludonarrative dissonance is basically when the story the game presents is different from the story the gameplay presents. Alright, I'm just going to make up a random example here. Say there was a video game where the story is about trying to make the world a better place, but then the gameplay is you launching fireballs into the earth. That's ludonarrative dissonance. The story the game presents is different from the story the gameplay presents. Now, Clint talks about how in his playthrough of the game, he chose to harvest the Little Sisters, which doesn't really make sense in the context of the game. Harvesting the Little Sisters would fall under the idea of objectivism, which, you know, self-worth and all that shit, and putting yourself before others, which means it doesn't really make much sense for the player to want to overthrow Andrew Ryan, as they would fall in line with his philosophy, and it wouldn't really make much sense as to why the player would want to help Atlas. I mean, if you're the type of player to save the Little Sisters, then the game's story makes sense, since the player would be altruistic and would sympathize with Atlas and would want to help him take down Andrew Ryan. I'll leave the link to his post in the description if you want to read it, and I completely agree. Luckily, BioShock 2 doesn't suffer from this issue of ludonarrative dissonance. Anyway, moving on, Jack goes to Neptune's bounty and meets a guy named Peach Wilkins who says that he will let him into the fisheries if he takes some photos of spider splicers. So Jack does that, and is then let into the fisheries but has to drop all of his weapons. Peach then tries to kill Jack, but Jack kills him. Jack then does reach the submarine where Atlas's family is, but Andrew Ryan blows it up. So now the objective has changed to taking down Andrew Ryan. Jack then heads to Arcadia, which is responsible for growing food and the oxygen and all that shit. Andrew Ryan then poisons it in an attempt to remove the oxygen from Rapture. So Jack then looks for Julie Langford? I don't know. To solve this issue, but Ryan uses the poisonous gas or whatever it is to kill her, which means the player has to go around and find a way to get rid of the gas. So Jack then heads to the farmer's market to get the resources, and it also has this stupid fucking beehive section, before then getting rid of the gas, but not before having to do this stupid horde section of the game, where fucking piles of enemies just come upon you and just attack you relentlessly. Jesus Christ. Anyway, afterwards we then get into my favourite part of the game, where Jack goes to Fort Frolic. First off, this section of the game is the most visually breathtaking, and it also has the best level design. Second off, the character you meet here is Sandra Cohen, who is just fucking hilarious, and is a major standout against all the other characters. Sandra Cohen wants you to take pictures of people who betrayed him, and then frame it in this art masterpiece, although I did have this glitch happen here. Oops. Overall, it's a fun and simple level, and the game gives you the perfect opportunity to experiment with all your weapons. Jack then heads to Hephaestus, where Ryan's office is located, and he needs to gain access to the door. So he uses lava to boil the water away from the reactor or something, and then builds an EMP bomb or something to deactivate the door, or something, I don't know. It's a fun segment, but it does ultimately go on too long. Anyway, we get to Ryan's office, and this is where the big part of the plot comes in.
In the end, what separates a man from a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? A man chooses, a slave obeys. Kill! A man chooses, a slave obeys. Obey!
After killing Andrew Ryan, Jack puts the key into the machine, and there's yet another reveal.
It's time to end this little masquerade. There ain't no Atlas kid. Never was. Selling my line of work takes on a variety of aliases. Hell, once I was even a Chinaman for 6 months. You've been a sport, so I guess I owe you a little honesty. The name's Frank Fontaine.
So it turns out that Atlas was actually Frank Fontaine. Frank Fontaine was thought to have been dead, and was the only person in Rapture to oppose Andrew Ryan, though BioShock 2 would later retcon that with fucking Sophia Lamb. Jack, the protagonist, is the son of Andrew Ryan and Jasmine Jolene. Due to some financial difficulties, Jasmine sold the baby to Tenenbaum on behalf of Fontaine. Jack was then grown through Fontaine Futuristics, and they placed memories in his head and also gave the activation phrase, "Would you kindly?" Jack was actually born in 1956, meaning he would be only around 4 years old at the time of the game. A fucking toddler is just going around shooting people. I want to see that. I want to see a version of BioShock where it's fucking like Jack as like a baby or a toddler, and he's just going around like fighting fucking big daddies and like splices and all that. That would be the best shit ever. Someone please, if there's a mod for that, I'm downloading that right after I get recording this. But Jack was basically Fontaine's backup plan to come in and kill Andrew Ryan if things didn't go so well. Surprise, they didn't. So they got Jack on an airplane to Rapture and hijack it to get him to kill Ryan. Now, while all this stuff is pretty interesting, I do have a few issues with it. First off, the whole, a man chooses, a slave obeys. Alright, it's basically trying to say that the player is a slave because they've only been doing what they've been told. It's trying to make the player question their part in the narrative. But it doesn't really work because of the nature of computer games. I said this a while back in my video on the Stanley Parable, but video games are meant to be played as they're designed. If you don't play by the rules of the game's design, then you'll never beat it. At least not legitimately. So if the only way to beat a game is to play by its rules, then you really don't have a choice to begin with. Choice equals free will, yet as previously established in this video with the Ludonarrative Dissonance thing, the player does not have free will. In fact, the game proves this a second later when you kill Andrew Ryan. It happens in a cutscene, out of my control. I can't choose if Andrew lives or not, thus proving my point. Also, what a way to create a disconnect between the player and the main character. Jack in the game is a silent protagonist apart from the beginning where he says one line of dialogue. He's a silent protagonist for the rest of the game. Silent protagonists are meant to be an empty shell for the player to fill, like Gordon Freeman or the Doom guy. They're meant to be a reflection of ourselves into this world, but in this case it causes a disconnect, because as the player we acted out these goals because we wanted to and were genuinely invested in the game, but the main character did it because of like mind control or some shit. So Jack is no longer a reflection of the player. Honestly, I think this was a good twist back in the day, but it really doesn't hold up nowadays. Not because it's predictable, in fact it's quite the opposite. It's just that the circumstances surrounding it are dumbfounded. Just because I can't see a twist coming doesn't necessarily mean it's a good twist. However, getting onto the second twist of the game, it may just be me, but I saw Atlas being Frank Fontaine coming from a mile away. Earlier in the game, when you try and save his wife and child from the submarine, you can actually go down to the submarine, but there's no indication of any life being in the submarine. He also says his wife is named Moira and his son is named Patrick, but when you come into Fort Frolic you can see posters of a play named Patrick and Moira. There's also an audio dialogue which mentions Frank Fontaine being Irish, and Atlas has an Irish accent, and Atlas still uses the phrase "would you kindly" even after the player learns about its intention. It's just too obvious. Anyway, Frank Fontaine now wants to take control of Rapture. For some reason. Frankie sends some bots to kill you, but the Little Sisters help Jack escape. Jack then wakes up in Tenenbaum's place, where she keeps the Little Sisters, and she was able to get rid of some of the wiring in Jack's brain, so the phrase, "would you kindly," doesn't work now. But Frank Fontaine has one more trick up his sleeve.
Code yellow. I just told your brain to tell your heart to stop beating. Not right off the bat, mind you. The heart's a stubborn muscle, but it ain't that stubborn.
So Jack now has to go around and find a cure to Code Yellow. He does this and then proceeds to chase after Fontaine, but Fontaine cuts Jack off through a door that can only be opened by Little Sisters. So this means Jack has to become a Big Daddy in order to get the Little Sisters to open the door for him. What? Tenenbaum already has Little Sisters with her. Why can't she just have one of them go through the door and open it for Jack? Jack then makes it to the end game, where a Little Sister then gives you a syringe to drain Fontaine of his Adam. So then comes the big showdown where naked Frank Fontaine, reference to Atlas Shrugged, obviously. The boss fight is really underwhelming. Jack then beats Fontaine as some Little Sisters come in and syringe him to death. There's a final cutscene where, depending on if you saved or harvested the Little Sisters, a certain ending will happen. In the good ending, the Little Sisters get freed from Rapture and go on to live their lives on the surface. In the bad ending, the Little Sisters just come out of the surface and attack everyone. The bad ending isn't canon though. Also, if you both saved and harvested the Little Sisters, then you still get the bad ending, but the dialogue is said with a slightly different tone. Overall, BioShock has some great storytelling, but the story falls apart towards the end of the game. The final boss is underwhelming, the game has some ludonarrative dissonance, and there are some parts that just don't make sense. Now, do I think BioShock's story is bad? No, I think it's great, but looking back on the game, the story isn't the perfect masterpiece everyone claims it to be. But the story itself is a very enjoyable experience, with the aforementioned great storytelling, engaging characters, and some interesting philosophy. The game explores themes of objectivism with the main antagonist Andrew Ryan, and it's pretty interesting. So in the end, BioShock is a terrific game. The gameplay is easy to pick up and understand, but is still challenging and rewards skill and critical thinking. The story, while not as much of a masterpiece as I remember, is still engaging and is well told for the most part. BioShock would then get a sequel later in 2010 with BioShock 2, and then another entry, BioShock Infinite, in 2013. There was also a novel released, BioShock Rapture, which I own actually, but I've never read it. There was also a movie planned, but never happened because the film would cost $200 million to make, and Universal wouldn't fund an R-rated film with that much budget. Either way, all of this spawned from just this game from 2007. BioShock is one of the greatest games ever made, and it does truly show how video games are a legitimate art form.
Beyond the shore, we'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing